Vallow versus Ghislaine Maxwell, mental health and review. Now, let's just start with this. I'm going to start by saying this. When I first started this channel, a few people were interested in the Ghislaine Maxwell case, the Epstein case, and I actually didn't want to talk about it, didn't want to discuss it, didn't want to do it, review it or analyze it because of because I didn't feel like I knew enough about Ghislaine Maxwell. And I didn't feel like, after Epstein committed suicide and the prince is not going to be held accountable for his involvement, I didn't have any interest. But after watching a recent documentary about Ghislaine Maxwell, I have renewed interest in her case. And I now think I understand what was going on with her, because somebody asked me a few months ago to do a podcast on Ghislaine Maxwell, and I told them to give me some time. And I said, you got to give me some time. And I put it off and put it off and put it off to the point where the few people that asked me to do a podcast on Ghislaine Maxwell probably got fed up and are no longer here. But I understand what happened with Ghislaine Maxwell now. And I'm putting her and Vallow together in this podcast because I think they both were part of some kind of cult which involved grooming. Now, in Ghislaine Maxwell's case, it wasn't a cult like the type of cult that Vallow was in. But I think her and Epstein were part of a team that exhibited cultish behavior. And cults groom people. And I think that's, if I'm going to believe that she was very involved in the crimes that she's allegedly committed, then grooming would have been involved. And I totally understand now how she could have fallen under Epstein's wing. And I'm going to talk about that later. First, I want to talk about Vallow. And I want to swear so much in this podcast, but I can't do it. I can't. I'm not allowed. Vallow is the most manipulative, cowardly, evil woman that I've ever read about. And I've read about the most evil of women. I mean, Myra Hindley, Rosemary West, the lot. Vallow, out of all of them, is the most evil and the most manipulative. And I believe she's going to get away with her crimes. That's my personal belief. And when I say that, she might eventually be brought to justice for her crimes. However, to me, justice delayed is justice denied. If I did the stuff that Vallow did, I would be under a prison. She's been able to manipulate her family, her friends. She manipulated all the people that was in the cult, preparing a people, whatever you want to call it. And she's obviously very, very good at manipulating people. People fall for her schemes. They fall for her scams. This is a woman that conspired to kill 2 husbands and is very much involved in the murder of her 2 precious children. It doesn't get any worse than that. And she's still continuing, despite the charges that are piling up against her. She's still managing to continue to evade justice. This is a woman who has no remorse. She doesn't care about anybody else. I don't even think she cares about her own family, because she manipulated her entire family and she manipulated her children. And she pit people against each other. She was always the victim. It was always everyone else's fault. She has never shown remorse or taken responsibility for anything. I think the only person she cares about or cared about in recent times is Chad. And I think it was a very narcissistic, codependent relationship where these 2 people were feeding each other's ego and narcissism. And it was all about money. I don't believe for one moment they believed what they were telling people about religion. I know a lot of people believe in the airy fairy stuff about zombies and the world coming to an end and all that kind of stuff. I don't believe that neither Chad or Laurie believe in God whatsoever. I think the only thing they cared about was collecting life insurance policies and doing whatever it was that they could to benefit themselves. I think that Laurie Vallow is evil. I think she's a manipulator. And I believe right now the justice system is failing the victims of her crimes. The fact that she is in a mental health facility instead of being in prison. The trial should have started a long time ago. The trial should have started a very long time ago. She should be getting ready to be sentenced to death, not life imprisonment. That's not good enough. She should be sentenced to death for what she did. This woman is evil beyond words. And the fact that she's been still, after all this time, being treated with kid gloves is a crime in itself. She's been allowed to manipulate, use people, facilitate her crimes. She's been allowed to get away with it for far too long. And I think she will get away with it, or justice will be severely denied. And as far as I'm concerned, justice delayed is justice denied. Because like I said, if I did what Laurie Vallow did, I'd be under a prison right now. There'd be no mercy for me. And she's been shown nothing but empathy, sympathy, and mercy. I watched the Laurie Vallow true crime movie, and I'm going to do a review on that as well before I get to Ghislaine Maxwell. So I know I am late on this review, but I was trying to get to ask Lifetime if I could use a few clips from the movie to make this review, and it just took forever to get a response from them. And anyway, I'm going to move on. So Doomsday Mom, the Lifetime movie about Laurie Vallow and Chad Daybell, the Laurie Vallow story. I enjoyed some of it, okay? So I'm not going to trash the movie like everybody else. I've been a fan of Lifetime movies forever. I mean, ever since I knew about Lifetime movies, I'm really a fan of Lifetime movies and true stories. And in fact, sometimes I enjoy Lifetime movies more than big blockbuster movies. I like drama. I like a story that has a dialogue. And I like a story that comes from the truth, or, comes from a true story that's autobiographical. So I'm definitely somebody who likes movies that are based on true stories that happen in real life. I think they casted the movie very well. Laurie Vallow was casted well. The woman portraying Laurie Vallow looked like Laurie Vallow. Bit skinny. She didn't have the Laurie Vallow boob job, but she passed for Laurie Vallow very well. Chad Daybell, I think they could have gotten a bit of a better fit for him. He didn't have Chad's chin, but no one can get the perfect fit. I think it was still a reasonably good casting for the movie. There was chemistry between the characters. There definitely was. And the picture of the film was very good quality. And it was entertaining for the most part, because it's an entertaining story. It's dramatic. It's got zombies. It's got, the afterlife, and all these different things, true crime, romance, all that kind of stuff. However, where the film fundamentally went wrong for me was how they portrayed Laurie to be a victim rather than a willing participant in Chad Daybell's schemes. And that's the real problem that I have with this film. Making Laurie Vallow to be this sweet, innocent woman who was a great mom, who all of a sudden meets this guy and is just gullible into believing everything he says and goes along with doing everything he says, but she's not a willing participant. She doesn't appear to be a willing participant in anything. And I don't believe that Chad was the driving force or the mastermind. I believe that they both are dangerous people. And I believe that she was killing people before she met Chad. That's my belief. I believe that she killed Joseph Ryan. She either killed him or had him killed. So this is not a person who is just this sweet little wallflower that she's made, this angelic creature that she's made out to be in this movie. This is somebody who is a willing participant in multiple murders, primarily for financial gain. And I think that is where the movie falls very, very short. I'm not going to trash the film. I've watched it several times. I find it very entertaining. But the narrative that they go on, that she's just this person who just innocently and gullibly went along with all of his ideas to get rid of people, I don't buy that at all. I think she was a lot more culpable. I think she was a lot more of a willing participant that the movie portrays. And I think that part is actually quite deceptive. And I think it's I think it's wrong. I think it's fundamentally wrong to portray somebody who has been a willing participant in multiple murders as innocent. And that's how the movie portrays Lori Vallow. And that's the real problem and dilemma that I have with the film. It's like everything is on Alex and Chad, and Lori is this girl stuck in the middle, this sweet, innocent girl stuck in the middle who is, she's not a willing participant. She's not portrayed as a willing participant in anything. And I think she was more than willing to have her children murdered. I think she was more than willing to have Charles Vallow murdered. I think she was more than willing to have her the previous husband that she married before Charles Vallow, Joseph Ryan. I think she was more than willing to have him murdered. I think she's a lot more sinister than the movie portrays. And that's the epic fail of the movie, is that Lori Vallow is not portrayed as the manipulative, seductive femme fatale, the murdering mother, the Black Widow that she truly is. And that's where the movie ultimately fails for me. Okay, so moving on to Ghislaine Maxwell. I'm not going to say that I feel sorry for her, but I will say that she deserves the presumption of innocence until the trial is set and the trial plays out and we hear the evidence. However, there are very, very damning allegations against her. And I think that fate has not been kind to her. So Ghislaine Maxwell was born in France in 1961. Her mother was French, and her father is of Czechoslovakian and Jewish background. And she grew up in extreme wealth in Oxford in a mansion called Headington Hill Hall. And her father's family are Jewish. And her father, Robert Maxwell, was a publishing tycoon. And she had many siblings. I think she was one of 8 or 9 children. So, and she's the youngest. So, this is a person who grew up in extreme wealth, high society in England, in the countryside, access to all kinds of resources, rubbing shoulders with heads of state, royalty, socialites, other socialites. So this is a woman who grew up in extreme wealth. And what got me and what really made me interested in Ghislaine Maxwell is that her father, who was a publishing tycoon not a family that had any money. Her father, Robert Maxwell, didn't have much money, but he seemed to have made his wealth on, in the media, in publishing. He went on vacation on a yacht called named after his daughter, Ghislaine Maxwell. It was one of his favorite things to do, to go on his yacht in Europe. And he was actually in the Canary Islands having a great time. And he was found dead. Somehow he went overboard, and Ghislaine Maxwell's father, Robert Maxwell, was found dead. And it was huge news over here in England. And after he died, he was found or exposed as a fraudster. He was stealing millions. And when I say millions, I mean he stole over £500 million from his employees' pension fund. So her father was a crook, a criminal. And after growing up in all this wealth, the entire family lost everything. Their possessions were auctioned off. They had to leave their home. And she ended up with basically nothing. So this is a woman who started out living in very, ostentatious circumstances, in surroundings, living, growing up in a mansion, living in extreme wealth, to finding out that her father was actually a fraudster. So her family was publicly shamed, and they ended up penniless, basically. And after this, she fled to New York and was living in a small 1-bedroom apartment. And it wasn't long after this that she met Ghislaine Maxwell, met Epstein. And I think what happened to her in regards to her father, her family being exposed, her father being found to be a fraudster, put her in a very vulnerable position and put her under the wing and control and manipulation, easy manipulation of Epstein, because Epstein had money and Epstein was rubbing shoulders with high society, just like she was when she was a child, when she was growing up. And Epstein could bring back the fancy yachts, the mansions, the fancy cars, the luxury that she had grown up with. He could bring that back to her. She could get that back again, being associated with him. So I think their relationship was another codependent relationship. This wasn't about love, in my opinion, at least not on his part. I think he, sociopaths, and Epstein was a sociopath. Sociopaths find vulnerabilities in people, and they exploit those vulnerabilities. So he was a girl who'd lost her father, she'd lost her status in society, she'd lost her wealth, and here was a man who could give her that again: status, wealth, money, privilege. And in return, I think he groomed her and manipulated her to get these young women for him to also use and exploit. So it was another codependent relationship where you have this very vulnerable woman doing things for a man that could give her back the life that she probably thought had been taken from her. And I don't excuse her behavior one bit. There are very, very serious allegations made against Ghislaine Maxwell. And I do believe it sounds like she groomed these girls, befriended them, pretended that she was going to help them, made friends with them, introduced them to the good life, in a way to groom them, brainwash them, and to bring them to Epstein, to put them in Epstein's harm's way. And I think that, like I said, this is another codependent relationship. It was like Epstein was like, if you groom these girls for me, I'm going to give you back the life that you grew up with, that you want. I'm going to give you access to money, to riches, to luxury. And I think it was that kind of relationship. Groom these girls for me, bring me these women, you're my ally, or you're going to be part of my team, and you're going to have access to unlimited wealth. So it was like a tit for tat relationship, a relationship where he started out grooming, brainwashing, and probably manipulating and exploiting her. And in turn, to get the benefits of the luxury lifestyle that she'd lost. To regain that, she went around grooming girls for him to exploit and use. And it wasn't until I heard about what happened to her father that I really, really started to understand what may have been happening with Ghislaine Maxwell. I don't think she's as evil as Lori Vallow, but there's absolutely no excuse for what she has allegedly done. No excuse for it whatsoever. And if she's found guilty, and if there's enough evidence there to find her guilty, then she deserves to be in prison. But this is a woman who was living in absolute luxury and in hiding. And, if she is guilty of what she's being alleged to have done, then I believe that she deserves to go to prison. There's lots of people who feel sorry for her. There's lots of, her siblings feel sorry for her. They don't believe that she's guilty. But I think it's one of these cases where she was in a very, very vulnerable position. She'd lost everything. She'd lost her father. She'd lost, status, wealth. And here was a man who came along who could give her back those things that she'd lost. And I think he manipulated and exploited her, to get these, to groom and brainwash and exploit these young women for him. She was like the middleman, if you know what I mean. She was the one who went out and made the contacts. She was the one who groomed the girls. And then once she gained their trust, she passed them on to Epstein. And, it's a sociopath preying on a vulnerable woman in a vulnerable position. And she also, in turn, became a sociopath herself, because you have to be a sociopath to have the mindset to groom and brainwash and exploit young girls for a wealthy older man's pleasures. And so I think that's exactly what happened. If what happened to her father had not happened, if he hadn't have died the way he did, if he hadn't found to be a fraud, if he hadn't have been found to be a fraud, she might never have gotten involved with Epstein the way in which she did. But I think he used her vulnerability and exploited it. That's what I think that happened here. But she deserves no mercy if she's guilty of the things that people are accusing her of.